recorded.
Great. Well, thank everyone for joining. Today, I, Hector Cruz, will be joining remotely, as well as our Vice Chair.
Whoops, I guess he won't be. He's still there, right?
I just see an H for his screen on my iPad.
What?
Go ahead.
All right, am I chairing this meeting?
Yes, I'll just say that.
Can I use that?
There you go.
Okay, well, Hector's here somewhere. He was there. Okay, so this is my 27th meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust. We have Hector and Beth are participating remotely, so any votes we take will have to be by roll call. Are there any member comments this evening? No? Well, Hector, you there?
Sorry about that. Lost connection.
Yeah, well, you are in Sturbridge, you know. It's like being out of the boonies. Street must have blown a little bit. We have our new member, Marty.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm all sworn in and ready to go.
I am.
Okay.
Ready to roll.
Congratulations. Okay. So, no member comments this evening? No, except congratulations, Grandpa.
Thank you.
All right. I wasn't at that meeting. Item 3 is discuss and vote on resubmitting the eligibility application for the Community Preservation Committee. Does anybody have any comments on that? Because I kind of forgot they were meeting. And
Yeah, I'll update
so
everyone on that. So this is
oops.
No problem.
Because he's not going to.
We lost him again.
Kevin Rowan, Hector, and Jason Molina were on the call.
I don't really have much except for what I picked up from her.
Yeah, why don't you update?
Sure. Go for it. Okay, so as I believe the trust is aware, a few weeks ago, the Community Preservation Committee held their first formal eligibility review of all applications that were submitted for funding consideration for their FY24 program, which will be considered at the annual town meeting this coming May. During that meeting, the committee members spoke about the Affordable Housing Trust's application to receive what is equivalent to the 10% annual set-aside. There's no specific project or program associated with those funds. The Affordable Housing Trust was just requesting the funds to be transferred over into the trust for future use. The CPC members voted that it was eligible, but were concerned that there was no associated project, and many of them did not feel that they would be willing to support moving forward without a specific project. So we had a conversation with the chair, Chair Cruz, and myself, talked to Jason Molina of the CPC earlier this week to try to get a little bit more information about what the CPC was thinking. And during that conversation, Mr. Molina really talked about the CPC's concerns with the Affordable Housing Trust being new, the CPC being new, and trying to find an appropriate role for how to spend the Affordable Housing Trust funds, really between the CPC committee members and their interests, the Affordable Housing Trust, and also potentially a conversation with the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. So we really left the meeting that with the thought of looking forward to another meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust, the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, and CPC members. Not necessarily maybe a full public meeting, but trying to get on the same page of how we may move forward in the future. At that meeting, I did express concern, and I think it's very important for the Affordable Housing Trust to have flexibility to be able to react to things that are happening in the real estate market when something may come online you want to pursue. I know you have $1 million in the trust right now without CPC funds, but in some instances that may not be enough if a multi-family unit came on or a larger complex came on. It would be opportunistic. So I think the real concern, as I understood it, was just everyone's in early days, CPC's in early days, Affordable Housing Trust, and how are we going to move forward with this in the future? I think there's a lot of parameters that this is my take. I think there's a lot of parameters that we can put in place to allow some more funds just to flow over into the trust, and I think there's a strong argument to make for the CPC to do that. Obviously, with this group not having a plan and priority in place, it makes it a little bit more challenging, but we're all working on that. I think we can get there. If nothing else, by the time we get back to the meeting or the application cycle for FY25 or the next cycle. So that's how I see it. It was a very positive meeting, but just looking to develop a relationship between 2 or 3 groups moving forward.
Wow, FY25. Hector, you were at that meeting. Do you have any other perspectives on that?
Yes. My main concern was, again, about, the ability to access the funds, and if this was a use it or lose it situation, which, they informed me that the funds would go into a reserve, and that, we would still have the ability to, file an application and access the funds. So that was my initial concern, that, we would miss an opportunity to capture this and then, be further behind. So I'm comfortable with the response. I think it's unfortunate that, we were a little behind in, trying to identify or get someone to respond to the RFQ for, our action plan. But I think that, we can get ourselves back in line by the beginning of the year.
Do you have any thoughts about this?
No, I mean, I think I understand where the CPC is coming from, but I'd definitely like to have either a joint meeting with them or have Hector meet with the CPC members so we can further understand what they'd like from us for their funding requests in the future.
So I think one of the, they wanted, I'll say, a little more meat on the bone, part of the application, a little more specific as to what the intent was. We were planning to use the funds, which I understood. I understand their concern. We also discussed, the ability to, work with Shrewsbury Housing Authority and work in some type of housing, a financial assistance program for anyone that's in a rent arrearage. So, we were trying to, bounce some ideas off each other as some opportunities where we can use the funds. And just as Kevin said earlier, I think the goal is to have all parties to sit down in the very near future to sit and have that conversation and see if we can find common ground and a plan to move forward.
Great. Well, everybody's here, so I guess we can have a discussion. I told Kevin, I started in the past, we can sort of start doing some research on the trusts and what the trust can do beyond the law. And I have, I'm starting to learn a little bit more about what the trust can do. And I'm hoping, and I know we'll get into it on the next, on the next item. Hopefully we'll get a consultant, and I think that will help. But one thing I came to realize is, and either I was naive or I just didn't focus on it, but I came to realize that the Affordable Housing Trust, even though it's a town trust, and even though it's pretty much a freestanding entity, is not necessarily the sole beneficiary of the funds coming from the Community Preservation Act.
Right.
One thing is, we could potentially be competing with nonprofits. We could be competing with the Housing Authority. So that, I don't know why I didn't think of it, but now that I'm aware of it, I think it raises some interesting questions. The other thing that has me thinking a little bit is, and it actually came out of something that I saw from the Community Preservation Coalition, the state agency. I think that the Housing Trust, and we've talked before about trying to figure out what our focus is going to be. And whatever our strategy comes to be, it is. However we decide, we think is a trust to public input. However we decide, what we settle on is what we think is the best opportunity to create affordable housing is what the trust decides is the best way to proceed. That might not necessarily be in harmony with what the Community Preservation Commission thinks, which I think we need to have a talk with the Community Preservation Committee. I'll get those things right. Get them right yet. I think once we set a strategy, whatever that is, and I think we do have to have a meeting. I think both the organizations have to have a meeting, and perhaps with the town manager included, because once we set our strategy and we have our policy and we have our goals, how does that jive with what the Preservation Committee's goals might be? Because we might decide that the best way to create as much affordable housing, whatever it is, either through subsidies or building duplexes or renovating houses, whatever that is, we decide that that's the best way to go, and we go to apply for funds. If the CPC says no, that they don't agree, then we shut out of that money. I think it's a discussion we need to, it might be premature for us at this point because we don't know what it's going to be. But I never really thought about that until this week. So I think it's going to be important that we do engage the consultant, and maybe because we're not that far along yet, that we should have that discussion with the CPC, but maybe we might be a little bit ahead of ourselves requesting the money. So waiting a year is not necessarily going to hurt us because nobody else has an application in right now. When we get to the point where we're competing with somebody, it could be an issue.
And
So-
what Rowan McAllister did outline to Kevin and I is that there's actually a procedure for off-cycle CPC application. So if we had a fall town meeting next year and the Affordable Housing Trust has a project in the near future that we would want it to be accessing the funds, say October, November of calendar year 2023, we could perhaps do that as well and get the funds at that point in time.
Right, and that would be important, because if a property comes up, could be a house, could be whatever, off cycle, as you said, Kristen, but somebody isn't necessarily gonna wait for us for over a year, to find out if we're gonna get the money. Because the first step is to get the CPC to agree, the second step is town meeting to agree. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, and I guess I found something to sink my teeth into and stop learning a little bit more about this. Something happened in the past week or so, Hector, and I got a little epiphany, and things are starting to come together in my mind. So I'm going to start doing some deeper research and hopefully bring some clarity back to, at least to myself, and hopefully to the rest of the trust on what we can do, and see where it goes. But I think maybe we were a little overly enthusiastic. I think we had the right idea, but
I think we're also following the model communities use as well. Some other communities, just their CPC does flush the funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. Perhaps their
Right.
Affordable Housing Trusts are more advanced than ours, or more further along, or their CPC has a different mindset as well.
right. So anyways, okay.
And my sense is, you know, at my meeting with the CPC, is that all they were is just interested in hearing, you know, what the plan was. And I think that, you know, that not knowing, or myself not being able to provide one, I think was, you know, the reason why, you know, they were, you know, a little more cautious about it. But I think that, you know, when we get the action plan up and going, and we have, you know, an idea of which direction and what area we're going to focus on, I think that we will be able to work well together with the CPC.
They're filling it too, right? CPC
Yes.
committee, so do
Yeah.
they have projects that they want to work on, or have they?
They have their action plan.
They do have an action
They
plan.
spent the past year very diligently, public outreach, focus groups, so they do have a plan that they're following in terms of goals.
Okay.
To their credit, they had an enthusiastic, motivated group before it even passed. And I would say 50% of that group were part of the group that were interested in it and supported it. And they did a great job. They hit the ground running. We were a little slower on the uptake. I think this might be a little bit more complicated too, and that's probably why. And they did a great job, and we're not in the same place yet where they are. So we'll get there. Okay, is there anything else on that issue? Okay, so there's nothing to vote on that.
Well, I would like to know, should we just vote to send a letter to the CPC that we appreciate their review of our ask, and that we look forward to meeting with them in the future, and we don't have a further project to submit at this time for their October 3rd meeting?
If they were expecting one, they probably.
Yeah, so the letter they sent us said, the committee asked that the Affordable Housing Trust revise and resubmit the eligibility form by tomorrow at noon. So we just say that
Okay.
we reviewed, we're not ready to submit a project, but we appreciate the review of our initial ask and look forward to working with them in the future.
So is that a motion?
I'll make a motion for that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? There being none, this requires a roll call vote. Marty, you can have your first vote.
They do it.
Kristen?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay. So Kristen, you can draft that for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna work with Rowan tomorrow to drop that letter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to four, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a very rough idea of what happened. I mean, obviously, nobody submitted, but maybe you have more detail. One company, one consultant said they didn't submit because they weren't gonna be able to touch this thing until after the first of the year.
Mhm.
One company said, they didn't understand what was expected on the financial part,
And they missed the question.
and they missed the question, and the other one was something similar to that, they got busy.
They were unsure if they met the required qualifications for the number of affordable housing trust projects that they
Oh, right,
recently
yeah.
completed. And they didn't have time to submit a question.
So, it didn't seem though that, unless, Hector or Beth, you know anything, or Kristen, it didn't seem like there was anything wrong with the RFP, except for maybe the question of the financial part. So what's the thought? Or did Rowan have any thoughts? Do we need to redo anything or just put it back out on the street again? Maybe clarify the expectation on the finance part?
I think we should, that's, I think the recommendation is that the RFP was in pretty good standing. We should probably clarify the level of financial analysis that we are expecting, and perhaps clarify the number of affordable housing trusts that a firm has worked for, or could it be a housing partnership or a similar type of entity? That's probably the highly advantageous section of the.
And, who can work on that? Rowan?
Yeah, Rowan and Emily could certainly work on making those changes if we want to vote tonight to make those changes and put it back out on the street.
Yeah, I have a question before we do that. I mean, is it possible to hire someone part-time to assist Rowan in doing this? If there's someone available and we can use some of our funds in order to cover that?
Yeah, we could certainly come up with a motion to vote, probably not tonight, but at a future meeting to hire someone to assist. I can tell you right now that the market is really, really tight. There's at least 11 assistant planning up to planning director positions posted within the Commonwealth right now. But it's certainly worth a try to get someone. We're also engaging with CMRPC right now. They're looking at the potential, and that's the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. They're actually have an offer out on the table for a regional housing coordinator that could help with affordable housing trust administration work, help with our filings to the Department of Housing and Community Development related to affordable housing projects, and could perhaps help with this as well. So I can certainly circulate that information to our trust and look into that and have a meeting in short order to discuss that.
But Hector, were you bringing it up to try to get that financial part and try to get the RFP on the street, or?
No, the heavy lifting has been done with the RFP, but I think that, managing the process going forward, because I think, we have, I think, looking at the timeline, I think it aligns to this one here being a January start date after all is said and done. I think that there might be a lot to do between now and then, and it might be putting too much on Rowan, with everything else that she has to do.
Yeah.
So just so we're clear, we gotta define their experience.
Yeah, she and I can work on that. That's a light lift. To revise the RFP and put that out, that's a light lift. I
Right.
think in the background while the RFP is out, we
Yeah.
could certainly decide whether we want to go with CMRPC and contract with them for this regional housing coordinator, or go alone and try to get a part-time housing coordinator for the affordable housing trust with
Okay.
our funds that we have, because we could definitely use that with our funds.
So we can get the RFP reworked
Mhm.
and get that out in a few weeks.
I would say 2 weeks. Yep.
How's that sound?
That sounds good.
So, yeah, timing wise with the holidays, we might have to give it a little, depending on when we get it out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll ask Kristen and Rowan or Rowan and Emily to try to come up with a suggestion on what we do for your question, Hector, about should we bring somebody in, get part-time, full-time, use Central Mass?
Yeah, we can use Central Mass Regional Planning. Yep.
Okay.
They already have a proposal that I'll circulate to the Affordable Housing Trust tomorrow.
Okay.
Can you go build an affordable unit to have this person's office in?
Why can we have a full
Can you
meeting?
build an affordable unit? so we
Yeah.
can-
Maybe they can work remotely, maybe they can work remotely.
Yeah, right.
A little tight.
Okay. Is that, we don't need to vote on that, right?
Well, we should vote on reissuing the RFP with those parameters of the financial
Should
matter and the.
Should we have a quick meeting before we do that? Or do you want to circulate it before, and if we have any questions, we can have a meeting?
Yeah, we can we can
Okay.
circulate it
So
before
do
it
you-
goes out.
So you think we should have a motion to
If we're in
rework?
general agreement that we want to rework it and put it back out on the street, I think we could have that vote today and then we'll just circulate it individually. If there's any major issues,
We
we'll
can
come back
come back.
together as a group, but if there's not, we can just get that RFP right out.
So somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
There you go.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Any further discussion? Any none? All those in favor? Beth?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, yes, okay. I wrote MB, I don't know what I wrote. What's number 5? Oh, new business.
New business.
Do we have anything else on the table right now? Anything new that we need to discuss, Hector?
I don't have anything.
No? Okay. Okay, I don't. Marty, you got anything to do?
I don't have,
Research before
I
we-
haven't done anything yet.
Not yet.
We'll definitely circle back with you and get you up to speed on more.
Yeah,
For sure.
Beth, anything?
I'm good, thank you.
No. Did anybody, watch, there was a hearing last night on the 40B, right?
Yes, 409 South Street.
Did
CDA
that,
hearing.
did that go long? I caught the end of it.
I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
Watch them.
I was just curious. Okay. Other members know that, we might be seeing, Main Street and North Quincy coming forward, another 40B.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. It's really, as far as we know, there's nothing else going on right now.
No, but there's always inquiries on
Right?
affordable housing projects in Shrewsbury
We're,
and housing projects.
we're right for the picking, so. Okay. So there's nothing else on that. Nothing else?
No, we had on there if the Affordable Housing Trust had any ARPA requests, but I talked with Kevin about that today and we're gonna hold on that.
Yeah, I don't think,
Since we don't have a plan,
oh yeah, I had it. and I skipped over it,
that's
sorry.
why we'll skip that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's, there's nothing yet. right?
The American Rescue Act
Oh, okay.
funds.
You know, we don't have anything to submit to the CPs. Yeah, okay, sorry. I skipped over it. All right, there any other business? Huh? Okay, then
To adjourn?
motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Okay, you gonna go babysit now?
Yes. It's
Okay.
exhausting.
Mike?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Yes, okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Hope you feel better, Beth.